Hello, welcome to ONTIC's Connected Intelligence Podcast. I'm Fred Burton, ONTIC's Executive Director of Protective Intelligence. This podcast offers valuable insights and practical advice to help you navigate the complexities of modern corporate security shared by leaders and innovators in the field. Now, on to the discussion. Hi, I'm Fred Burton here today with my old friend Frank Rodman. Frank is the CEO of Torchstone Global and a senior security executive with more than 30 years of experience managing risk across government service and the private sector. He has led event security and executive protection efforts for corporate sponsors at 3 Olympic Games and 12 NFL Super Bowls, and previously served as a special agent with the U.S. Department of State's Diplomatic Security Service. His career has included assignments ranging from embassy security in Japan to the FBI NYPD Joint Terrorism Task Force during the 1993 World Trade Center bombing investigation. Frank, welcome to the ONTIC show.
Thanks for having me, Fred.
It's my pleasure. To start, please introduce yourself to those who may not know you and share a little bit about your background and how did you get into corporate security and ended up as CEO of a very successful private security firm.
Well, sure. So as you mentioned, I'm the CEO of Torchstone Global, actually one of the founders of the company. We launched in September of 2010. So it's been a while. We're focused on security, risk management, executive protection, protective intelligence, GSOC operations, event security coordination, security consulting, and what we call integrated services or embedded services, where our employees are embedded within our client organizations to help manage their security programs. My career has moved through lots of different kinds of security environments. As you mentioned, I got my start in government service with the Diplomatic Security Service, where I was exposed early to the demands of protecting high-profile people, dignitaries, foreign officials, U.S. Secretary of State, U.S. Ambassador to the United Nations. So that work really is what gave me the foundation in protective operations, advanced planning, interagency coordination, and essentially helping to manage uncertainty. When I moved into the private sector, I had to adapt that government experience to a very different world. Corporations, executives, families, events, private clients. That all eventually led to Torchstone, where we're trying to bring together technology and intelligence with protection to provide what I call practical risk management. So I guess the theme across my whole career has been that protection isn't just about responding to threats. It's about building a system, building the relationships and the intelligence capabilities that allow us to be more proactive. We like to say at Torchstone that our mission is to help keep bad things from happening to our clients. It's the kind of thing that you can never truly achieve. It's like the star on the horizon that you keep moving toward and never actually reach, but it doesn't mean that it doesn't still inspire us to act and to help our clients navigate, what's a very risky world.
Frank, you have worked in both government security and corporate security at, let's face it, the highest levels. And what are the biggest differences in how each environment approaches protection, intelligence, and decision making?
Well, I think in government, obviously, you've got clear authority. You've got a command structure. You've got formal sources of intelligence. There's usually a statutory or legal basis for the mission, right? In the private sector, in the corporate world, we have to operate not from a place of authority, but we have to essentially try to operate through influence, right? We're trying to influence our principals, our clients, our protectees, trying to influence them to accept the security that we're trying to provide them, right? Because in the private sector, it's security's job to support the business objectives, whether it's a business or whether it's a celebrity or a professional athlete. They have a mission. Our job is to support that mission by helping them focus on that and not on the threats that exist. So I'd say that would be the biggest difference between the two. I think the other challenge is that in the private sector, sometimes there's a lack of specific and timely information about the threats. Sometimes there is in government too. A lot of times there is. Everybody wants intelligence that tells them exactly what's going to happen, where, who is it going to be, what's going to occur. But most of the time, the intelligence doesn't come in that form. It's incomplete, and so you need a way to collect the information, to evaluate, and to share it. That's why we decided to build our own GSOC about 3 years ago now, where we could monitor the security environment in real time, 24/7, around our clients and our security operations. Because security protective intelligence is it's not a crystal ball, right? It's a function that helps us make decisions and that supports those decisions.
Frank, I know that you worked on the 1993 World Trade Center bombing along with your colleague at Torchstone, Scott Stewart, and obviously our unit was involved with aspects of that case back at headquarters on Virginia Avenue in D.C. How did that period influence your understanding of threat environments?
I think what it clearly underscored was that there's the information about the threats do not reside within any one agency, uh, jurisdiction, any one functional area. Uh, there's nobody that has the whole picture, right? And so it showed me the importance of not only trying to interpret what may be weak signals, but to try to connect the dots. I feel like the big difference today versus back then is we have so much more data now. The challenge is to wade through all that information to try to connect the dots and to make decisions based on that data and to convert all the information into a clear course of action for whether it's the protection team or the business or the principal. So connecting signals, I think, is important. I think, putting it into the context of executive protection today, a hostile post or, a letter expressing a grievance or uh, some unusual surveillance that the protection team notices, a doxed address. I mean, all these things could point to something meaningful that could, when the dots are connected, tell a different story than that incident in isolation. So I think, I think about our team. You mentioned Scott, who leads our protective intelligence effort. We also have our own in-house clinical psychologist, Dr. Malik Carr, who's our chief operating officer, because you've got the behavioral threat assessment piece as well as the protective intelligence piece. So there's a lot of cross-functional information sharing that needs to happen, and I think that's one of the things that I experienced on the JTTF was you bringing all these agencies together so that the information can be shared and analyzed to be able to create the threat picture that helps us make the right decisions.
Frank, I know you worked on the Tokyo subway poison gas attack when you were assigned to the U.S. Embassy there in Tokyo. What lessons from that event remain relevant for security leaders today?
Yeah, so that was a good example of don't make assumptions about your security environment. When I was told my first overseas assignment was going to be Tokyo, I thought, well, this is going to be boring for a security professional going to the safest city in the world. But while I was there, we had the poison gas attack on the subway. We had the Philippine airline bombing, which turned out to be Operation Bojinka, Ramzi Youssef, right? Who I felt like followed me there from New York. And we had the great Hanshin earthquake in Kobe that killed 5,000 people. So it actually was a really interesting and challenging assignment for me. I think the poison gas attack specifically was a reminder that you can't make assumptions about the security environment. I mean, this was an unconventional weapon, a non-state actor, uh, mass transportation, you know, very disruptive, and came with enormous uncertainty, at least for us in the wake of the incident. The Japanese National Police Agency knew very quickly who was responsible. They were very squared away on that investigation. We didn't really need to do much to support them. It was more a matter of understanding what they knew and understanding what the scope of the risk was. But the lesson I took from that was, here's a low probability, high impact event. And, you know, we like to say that it's our job to plan for the worst case scenarios, right? So in our planning, are we questioning our plan and proposing those kinds of worst case scenarios to try to poke holes in our plan? That's something that we do pretty regularly.
We'll get back to the conversation in just a moment. But first, I wanted to let you all know that there's an easy way to stay informed about ONTIC's upcoming events and new resources. Subscribe to our monthly newsletter to get updates sent directly to your inbox. Join the 20,000 plus security professionals who are already receiving these insights and sign up today. The link to subscribe is in the episode description. Frank, you have led event security and executive protection for corporate sponsors and protectees at multiple Olympic Games and Super Bowls. This question is near and dear to my heart. Obviously, I was at the Olympics in Atlanta, and everything was fine until the bomb went off at Centennial Park. And to your point, you are surprised when these kinds of events take place, even though you think about them all the time. As you look from managing all these events that you've done, what makes major event security uniquely complex?
Well, I think part of it is all of the elements that are combined in an event like that. You've got time and place predictability, you've got high visibility, you've got crowds, media, VIPs, you've got vendors, you've got sponsors, you've got public access, commercial interests. It's all compressed into one event. And the threat environment is so broad. If you think about all the things that could go wrong at an event like that, from physical threats to crowd behavior to protests, activists, misusing credentials. I mean, one of the projects that we do for some of our professional sports league clients and for some of the professional sports and concert venues is we do red team assessments where they engage us on game day or event day to try to breach security at the event, even to try to bring a weapon into the event. And it's scary how many times we succeed, to be quite honest with you. But the reason to do it is for the security teams to understand where the gaps are and to get better. It's not a gotcha type of an exercise. It's let us help you understand what the risks are and how you can better prevent against those kinds of vulnerabilities. I mean, at the end of the day, planning for a major event isn't really one plan, because as the security people, we don't control all aspects of the planning, right? There are lots of people that are involved. And so relationships and coordination and teamwork, that's the important thing. Because at the end of the day, the people organizing the event, they want to make sure that it's enjoyable and successful. And so when we design our security, yeah, we have to plan for worst case scenarios, but we also have to balance the need for security with the need for the event to be well attended and for people to have a good time. So it's a little bit of a paradox, but that's what we try to manage.
Yeah, you raise an interesting point, Frank. It's really very interesting as to how you balance visibility, discretion, guest experience, and safety at one of these events. And, I know the sponsors and the events hosts and so forth want it to appear to be seamless and so forth, but there's so much taking place behind the scenes, especially on the logistics front.
Yeah, and unlike the government where they control the environment. I mean, think about Madison Square Garden for the NBA Finals the other night when the president was there. Look at the way the government controlled the environment around Madison Square Garden, right? In the private sector, we have to adjust to the security environment that exists. And I like to say that the security has to be visible enough to be a deterrent, but not so visible that it detracts from the customer experience, the experience of the attendees. There were in a lot of interviews, people commented that all that security at Madison Square Garden made it a less enjoyable event for them. So it's something that we think about and we have to balance. I think that the best event security is is felt. It's not necessarily seen. You've probably been to events where something didn't feel right. You felt like it wasn't quite as secure as it should be. We try to achieve the opposite, where maybe you don't see so much security, but there's just a sense that the environment is safe and that people feel like they're being looked after.
Yeah, that's very well put. And when you think about that in context, that I mean, we have the FIFA World Cup going on as we speak. At the time this podcast is being done, and then obviously we got the upcoming Olympics and so forth. When you start thinking about that, and then of course, I think in everybody's mind today are things like the horrible shooting event in Las Vegas, and it's I mean, let's face it, we are living in a fairly dangerous world, especially in our current assassination culture and the heels of the Charlie Kirk assassination, the attempts on President Trump's life.
Absolutely. And so how do we not live in fear, but live in a way where we can make logical, rational decisions about things like security without interfering with people's quality of life, with their freedom of movement. I mean, at the end of the day, um, we all know that security requires trade offs, but sometimes the trade offs create more risk for people. I don't know if you remember when they used to have the OSAC conferences in the State Department, right? Well, they had all this security that you had to go through to get into the State Department. But what happened? You had the top security directors for the Fortune 500 all standing on the same sidewalk next to that busy street, waiting to go through the security at the State Department building. Well, that created another risk. And then eventually we saw, okay, they put up concrete barriers now. So the people lined up to go through security are maybe a little bit more safe. So you have to think about those trade-offs. I think at the end of the day, there is no such thing as absolute security. There's no 100% solution. But that doesn't mean that we can't think logically and rationally about the level of security that's specific events or venues should have in place. What's reasonable. I think that's our standard.
Frank, you've served in the government, you've served in the private sector, and you've built a very successful company. Looking back, what are some of the things that you would tell that next Frank Rodman that wants to build that protective intelligence division or that executive protection company? What advice would you give that person?
I think my number one piece of advice was to build the right team, right? Security, uh, a mature security program requires a team with lots of different experiences and backgrounds and expertise. there's no one functional expert that can address every aspect of our security. Our team includes, yes, it includes agents from diplomatic security, from the Secret Service, from FBI HRT, from SEAL Team 6. We've got people from all those agencies, but we've also got people who come from military intelligence, people who've come up through corporate security, people who've worked for single family offices. All of those areas of expertise are important for us to be able to effectively manage the risk that our clients are facing every day. And so my advice would be to build the right team. I think the second thing I would say is to learn how to communicate more clearly with the people you're trying to help solve their security problems. People are going to assume that you have the functional expertise. That's why they hired you in the first place. But how effectively can you communicate the measures that you would recommend that they take to mitigate their risk? I think that's super important. So when we hire somebody, to me, it's not just about their security experience and their security expertise. It's about their knowledge about how business works. It's about how well they communicate, how well they can manage a project. Because of this requirement that you've got to corral many different teams of people with different agendas to try to work toward the same goal, and that's better security.
Frank, in closing here, we ask all of our guests this question. What does connected intelligence mean to you?
Yeah, I think connected intelligence is really about bringing together the people, the information, and the disciplines that are needed to help make the decisions that mitigate risk before that risk turns into a crisis, right? So, but it's mostly about connecting people. I think I like to say that intelligence isn't just a product; it's a process. I talked about our GSOC. We've got a team of intelligence analysts. The coordination between those groups and our protectors who are out in the field. Our consultants who are working with clients, our partners in law enforcement, and on the communication teams and legal teams of our clients. All that's really important because, again, the biggest challenge is the lack of specific, timely intelligence. And since the information is rarely perfect, you've got to have this system in place whereby the information is being shared and correlated so that the right judgments can be made about security. So, to me, connected intelligence isn't just. It's how we turn fragments into the context that we need to make decisions about security.
Frank, I want to thank you for being on the ONTIC Connected Intelligence podcast. And I know that Torchstone is doing great things, so keep up the great work.
Thanks, Fred. I appreciate it.
Thanks for listening in. To find more episodes, visit us at ontic.co/podcasts. Don't forget to rate and subscribe on your streaming platform of choice. Know someone who would be a great podcast guest? Or have questions you'd like us to answer? Email us at podcast@ontic.co. This episode was produced by AJ McKeon. And I'm Fred Burton. Thanks for listening.